we interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
All right, welcome everybody to a live episode 104 of Vikings Uncensored. We're going hot and heavy with draft talk tonight with our special guest, Tyler Forness, managing editor of USA Today, Vikings Wire, host of the Real Forno show over on Vikings First and Skol. You can also find him on on Twitter at The Real Forno. Tyler, how's it going tonight?
Life's pretty good. I'm a big wrestling fan, so it's WrestleMania weekend. Got Super Card of Honor here in about an hour, and I'm excited to kill the time to talk Vikings.
Perfect. It's got a lot of people in the comment section already. If you guys have questions, toss them in here, and we'll try to get to a few of them as we go along. But we'll get right into this here, I guess, tonight. Starting off now, free agency has pretty much run its course. There's a few odds and ends still hanging out there. But after the main waves of free agency, Tyler, what do you think the biggest needs still are for this team?
I think the biggest needs are relatively simple. The biggest need is quarterback of the future. Now, how you want to quantify quarterback of the future is completely up to you. Could be a veteran. It could be a rookie. It could be a young guy like a Trey Lance. Whatever that quarterback is, you need to figure it out, and you need to have that answer in-house by the end of, I would say, by the end of the draft, or at the latest before training camp starts. You have to have a succession plan of some sort if you are choosing to move on from Kirk Cousins. If you're not, then you have to figure out a way to get an extension done. You can't go into this next year as a true lame duck where you just are going to wait it out and you're going to hope a guy is ready at 2024. Drake May and Caleb Williams are those consensus two guys. Just like last year, you had CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. Vikings will probably be too good in order to get one of those guys, which means it's going to require a massive trade up. What happens if two teams want both those quarterbacks at 1 and 2 and don't want to trade? Well, if there's not a third guy, you're screwed. You have to try and figure out some sort of succession plan. The whole waiting on a quarterback thing, if there's a guy, you go get him. And like, I still remember the movie Draft Day, and I talked about this on my show the other day. Kwesi is going to have a guy written on that yellow Post-it note, just like Vontae Mack was for Sonny Weaver. Whoever that guy is, just go get him relentlessly. Do whatever it takes, within reason, obviously. You're not going to trade Justin Jefferson for the number 1 overall pick, but do what you have to do to go get that guy, because it will be a true franchise changer for your team. And you know what? It's not going to happen. But if that guy was Lamar Jackson, go get him. If that guy happens to be Hendon Hooker, which I swear to God, I hope not, go get him. Whatever that guy is, you have to identify, you have to go attack and get that person.
I love that. I love that mentality as well. I'm right there with you on that.
And I know we talked about this a little bit. I did on the Rhino Ranch show that we started this earlier this week. Talking about some of the quarterback stuff too. And, you know, the fact that the Vikings really have never in their history been aggressive in getting a quarterback. It's always either waiting for one to fall to us, or like Spielman did with Ponder, it's, oh shit, all the other quarterbacks are gone. Who's the next guy on my list kind of thing. And What is it?
I think Quessy and KOC have had a plan all along. And I think that involves getting their guy this year as opposed to waiting until next year, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think that they're here to wait. I think they're here to get that guy right now. And Judd Zulgad from Purple Daily and Score North wrote a column for Vikings Wire talking explicitly about how these two were hired to find the quarterback of the future. And then Doogie all but confirmed it during their Scoops podcast on Tuesday afternoon. Look, you have to figure out what the future is a quarterback. And you know what? If you want that to be Kirk Cousins, you figured it out. And that's really what you have to do right now, because you have to figure out what you're going to do at the position. And there cannot be some waiting game here.
So since we kind of are...
No, you're fine. You're fine. I just think my dog has some in his mouth. I'm just making sure he's not choking.
Well, since we've already kind of started on the quarterback situation, let's roll into the quarterback prospects for the draft anyway. Of course, we've got Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, and then a few other ones. What are you thinking on we'll start with the top, with the big four, whatever, so to speak, kind of what your thoughts, where you think they might go. Is there a chance the Vikings go after one of those guys? Well, what are your thoughts on that, I guess?
So I'll tell you how I have them ranked first. I've got CJ Stroud at 1, Anthony Richardson at 2, Bryce Young at 3, and Will Levis at 4. And then in distant 5th, I've got Hendon Hooker. I think it's going to end up being CJ Stroud or Anthony Richardson at 1, just based on what Frank Reich prioritizes at the position. As good as Bryce Young is, especially outside of structure, I don't think he's going to have a lot of those boxes checked that Reich is going to be looking for. Everybody's heard the Bill Parcells list of qualities for a quarterback. You got to be at least 6'2". You got to be a 3-year starter in college. It's a little different world now. That guys will start 1 or 2 years, come out, and they'll be very successful pros. It's not 1990 anymore. And I think that is going to make a difference with some of these guys, especially Anthony Richardson, only 13 career starts. That's not a lot. But when you look at the film, he pops off in a lot of ways, and it's ways you don't necessarily think. I think it's going to be Stroud or Richardson at 1, and my intel says it's going to be Bryce Young at 2. And Drew, I can't tell you how much I disagree with Stroud being a bust. I'm in love with CJ Stroud, but we can get in that here in a little bit because I want to finish answering the question. So if you have Stroud at 1 and you have Young at 2, which is how I think it's going to end up going, 3 is the wild card. This is where the draft really starts. If a quarterback needy team loves Anthony Richardson, that's the spot you trade up to. Monty Ossenfort's going to be open for business. He's going to be like, okay, I will move back. I have a long rebuild project ahead of me. Might as well get a ton of capital, especially because I need to worry about helping Kyler Murray long term. So they move back. Let's say they get, if the Vikings were to do it, I projected it to be first this year, 2024 and 2025, 87, and Daniil Hunter. That's the kind of package you have to move up. Trades are very fluid, but the price always goes up for a quarterback. And giving up a 28-year-old edge rusher would definitely be that pot sweetener that might convince the Cardinals to go for it. If it's not the Vikings, which I don't think it will be, I think you're going to see a team like the Raiders, the Titans, maybe even the Commanders. There have been a lot of comparisons to Cam Newton, which I honestly don't see, other than they're big and they can run and they can throw really hard. Those are otherwise Richardson's not Cam Newton. But Ron Rivera understands how to utilize and grow a quarterback with rare skill sets and size like that. So the Commanders are an interesting spot. The Lions could also be a team that wants to trade up. All they'd have to do is give up 18 probably to go up to 3. And that can be incredibly intriguing for a GM trying to rebuild too. Hey, I now have a second first-round pick, and I'm still going to get one of those top 3 defensive linemen. Sounds pretty intriguing, right? So that's kind of where I see those guys. I think Richardson's gone by 4. If he's there after 4, I'll be shocked. Levis could go anywhere from 4 to 23. And I don't think it's necessarily an indictment on his skill set. I just think he gets overhyped by some circles because he does have the ability to make Josh Allen type throws, and he gets underlooked by others because of the surroundings that he had to deal with at Kentucky. He can navigate the quick game incredibly well, and he can do a lot of things, but he needs a little bit of time to develop. My comparison for Will Levis is Kirk Cousins with a howitzer. Like, if you gave Kirk Cousins elite level arm talent, that's Will Levis. You can win with that. And if you are able to get more of those elite type throws out of Will Levis, you're looking at a very, very good quarterback. But there's a ways to get there. And that's why a year off could really make a difference for Levis as far as transitioning to the pro game.
He's an interesting prospect, to say the least, in my opinion, for sure. High ceiling, he's kind of a weird fellow as well, which kind of is off-putting to me too. But
so I will say this: he apparently did admit in interviews the whole mayo and coffee and banana thing. He was just having a good time. He doesn't really do those things in real life.
Fantastic.
I think he was at the combine. Look, he trolled the people. Good on him. That was pretty awesome.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, I have to agree with you there.
No, there was something I saw floating on Twitter here a couple days ago about Levis not doing so well in interviews and stuff. Have you heard anything like that, or is that just more, this time of year you can't believe anything you're reading? You
got to be careful who you're reading it from too. That was Chad Forbes, and he is known to lie a lot. Don't ever listen or to take anything he says seriously. He's one of those people. Reputable sources, guys like Daniel Jeremiah, guys like even like Mel Kiper Jr., your insiders in the industry, your Adam Schefter's, Ian Rappaport's. Even with those guys, you have to be a little careful because sometimes they will just feed stuff to people and just so they can parrot a narrative. So again, then guys will end up falling. There's a lot of little things surrounding everything. So you gotta be careful. Right now is peak lying season. This is like like the Democrat and a Republican nominee for president going after each other and calling each other liars in smear campaigns. That's kind of what the last month of the draft process is like.
From what I have seen of Levis on tape, I absolutely like. I like a lot of the pure quarterback qualities that he brings. He has a good arm, a lot of arm talent there. It's just utilizing it to make more efficient and next level throws. But I like Levis. The jury's still out for me as well, but he's a good number 2 guy behind Richardson for me, as unbelievable at getting. So
do a quick. Oh, go ahead, Telly.
I was just gonna say Levis he's a guy, if you have to start him day one, he's so good in the quick game, slants, RPOs, just 3-step drop, fire it to a spot in a timing route. He's great at that. You can help him grow the other things while he's just manufacturing a basic offense. Like that's something that's a real benefit for him. But I think he would do well or best sitting for a year or two.
And it's ideal here in Minnesota. And he's deceptively got some good escapability and scrambling abilities as well, in my opinion. So,
do a quick shout out to some of the people in the chat here before we get going. Purple and Gold for days. What up, Justin? Drewster. Toonses is here. My Worthless Opinion, one of my favorite all-time commenter handles. Dan, Pantheon, Anthony. Welcome all you guys. Thanks for joining once again. Drew's got a question for you here, Tyler. Give us a sleeper late round guy from the quarterback position.
So it depends on kind of what you're looking for. If you really want like a deep sleeper, and he's pretty well known at this point, it's Tyson Bagent from Shepherd. The guy has all the arm talent in the world, but he has a long way to go from a mental processing standpoint, how to handle pressure, needs some mechanical work too. But the traits are there, and he was the most impressive thrower of the football at the Senior Bowl down in Mobile. I'm a big Clayton Tune guy from Houston. little inconsistent, but he kind of had to do a lot himself. The offensive line didn't do him any favors. Alton McCaskill, his starting running back, tore his ACL in fall camp, so he wasn't able to play at all last year. And really, they only had Nathaniel Dell on the outside, so he did a lot himself, and he has escapability. He knows how to use full progression reads. He can throw the deep ball really well. He can throw outside the numbers, but he's inconsistent, and he makes some poor decisions at times, and that's why he's going to be available on day 2 or day 3. But if you have to take a guy that isn't one of those top guys because you want to, 1, take a chance, and 2, at the very least, you have a backup for a few years, I would go Clayton Tune. But I also have to say I love Jaron Hall. He's the best. And even though he's 25, that's a 25-year-old I would take a bet on.
Okay, so AJ's asking a question here, and this is actually one I was just going to bring up to you. What's your take on Dorian Thompson-Robinson out of UCLA? Seems like the Vikings are doing a fair amount of due diligence on this kid.
Yeah, I've heard that too. And one thing about Dorian Thompson-Robinson is he's a rare 5-year starter. He started for 5 years at UCLA, and he has been incredibly inconsistent. But when he's on, he's very good. He can make all the throws. He doesn't have the biggest arm in the world, but it's more than NFL capable. And he's got the ability to run the football. And he can create. There was a game against Washington State. I want to say 2021. It was 73-65. Like, that is a game to watch of his because he does a lot of different things, and he shows the ability to hit the home run from multiple spots on the field in multiple ways. I don't know if he's going to develop into an NFL starter, but like that late day 2, early day 3 range, if you want to take a chance, I think DTR is a guy, especially with his mental makeup and character, that it would be worth betting on. But just kind of like Kellen Mond, I worry about if you are a long-term starter at the college level, how much can you really grow in the NFL? If he grew in college, but we didn't see any kind of substantial growth. We didn't see him really take a massive leap. He just kind of slowly got better. How is that going to translate to the NFL? I don't know. But at least you have a lot to go off of, and you have a player that has shown the ability to grow. It's really tough with long-term starters, especially when you're 23 years old, because the older you are, the harder it is to really grow and develop because you should be in your prime.
You know, that's been kind of the knock, too, with Hendon Hooker being as old as he is on a lot of things, I think.
Well, let's talk about that because I think Hendon Hooker's a different story. He didn't really thrive until this past year when he was already 24, playing against like 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. That, to me, is a red flag. I don't think he's very good in the quick game. I think he struggles with some of those easy throws. He's wildly inaccurate, shockingly, in the quick game.
He scares me. He does. He scares me. It'd be a scary. It's a risky pick taking him any higher than the second round. In my opinion, that's almost too high.
I wrote a piece for Zone Coverage. I wouldn't touch him in round 2 either. I'm going to have Doug Farrar of Touchdown Wire on my show next week, where he wrote a long piece on why the offense actually doesn't matter at all, and we're going to talk about it. So make sure you check that out. But I'm not sold on him one iota because the late bloomer aspect. You got to remember, 2021. He didn't win the starting job. He only got it because Joe Milton got hurt. Like, if you can't beat out Joe Milton at 23 years old, that's a big red flag for me.
Yeah,
then,
of
course,
you first or second round.
No, then, of course, you got Mike Tannenbaum going out there and having him mocked at pick 5 to I looked at that. I quit reading that mock draft after I saw that because I'm like, come on.
Look, he thinks Hooker could have gone first overall. I'll be honest. Like, I used to work for Mike Tannenbaum, and I think he's a decent guy as a human being. But there's a reason he's not running an NFL team anymore.
And that was on display when he put Hendon Hooker at 5.
Yeah.
I kind of thought that too when I saw that. It's like there's probably a reason why he's not, or he's doing mock drafts instead of real drafts now. But
Yeah.
Anything else on quarterbacks you want to hit before we move on to the next group of offensive individuals?
If you were to bet on a player in this draft to be great at quarterback, I'm betting on Anthony Richardson.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not only the upside, he is so much more advanced in the nuances of playing the position, running through progressions, not wanting to run the football when things break down, wanting to attack you down the field. And he's great at the area on the field where you need to be great. And that's the intermediate area, 10 to 19 yards, the area Justin Jefferson lives. Like those things, along with, hey, all you have to do is get him to be consistent with his mechanics and footwork. He's got it up here. He's got it right here, and he's got it with his legs.
It's dangerous.
Now you just have
dangerous.
to clean up things, make it consistent. That's it. Now, that's a hard ask, but you're not asking a guy to like have to completely fix his throwing motions. Motion's fine. It's footwork. It's syncing up his lower and upper halves, and it's just being consistent. You can do that. You have a superstar.
Playmaker.
Yeah. And honestly, I would love to see him jump up to 3 and get him if he's still sitting there after, at that point. But like you said,
it's going to be a lot of teams trying to jump up to number 3 to snag him, I think, regardless.
Yeah. All right. We spent 20 minutes on the quarterback position here. I think we'll move on to the next part. Probably, and I know this is a position you've been pumping up quite heavily on your different shows and everything, Tyler, but wide receiver position, more importantly, wide receiver 2. Who do you got there? And I guess top 5 rankings and, who fits best for the Vikings?
So if they really are going to switch to 12 personnel and make that the base again, I think that you're going to want more of a bigger body guy and a guy who can still block, because that's kind of what Shanahan asks his receivers to do. And that's basically the style of offense you're going to be getting. Now, I think the reason why the Vikings signed Josh Oliver is because Kwesi Adofo-Mensah saw a way to exploit the market by paying a decent amount for a high upside tight end 2, when a wide receiver 2 is going to cost you $11+ million a year. And those guys that are on the market for that price don't really give you that upside that you're looking for. So I think getting wide receiver 2 in the draft, and look, Justin Jefferson making $4 million this year. His average annual value should be probably 25 to 30. So you're already getting 20 to 25 million in surplus value. And that's one of the reasons why people say, hey, don't take a guard in the first round. Don't take a running back in the first round, because that surplus value of what you can get by finding a superstar at the position is nowhere near what it would be for a premium one. And that's why the conversation exists. If I were the Vikings, I would target Quentin Johnston, TCU. He is my number 1 wide receiver, and he is my number 2 overall player. I love Quentin Johnston. I think he can do a lot of things, and I think he has shown the propensity to get better at the things he needs to. Route running and learning the nuances of the position and how to lean and how to create better separation, because he's fast. He can win at the catch point. He wins in contested catches. He can leap. Don't let anybody try to tell you he can't, because Max Duggan was an awful quarterback, and the few opportunities that he had didn't count because the ball was thrown so far out of bounds, but he showed the ability to do it. And that's what you got to look for. If they don't do it, see if they can and project it forward. Like Justin Jefferson, can he win outside? Well, we haven't seen it. Well, does he show the ability to, based on his traits and how he releases and how he handles coverage across from him? That's how you project it forward. And I think Johnston has the ability to be a number 1 receiver in the National Football League. And you know what? While he learns the nuances, go balls and get him the ball in space, because he's great yards after catch, powerful, and he can break tackles and outrun people. That sounds like a pretty good wide receiver too, right? Like,
works for me.
That's my dude.
It would be
Jordan
a nasty
Addison,
1-2 punch.
Oh, yeah. Jordan Addison's my number 2. I don't know if he's a great fit. Jordan Reed mocked him to us this week, but I think that his lack of overall size and strength could be a real issue. Dealing with press coverage, like, can he deal with 200-pound corners just beating him up at the line of scrimmage constantly? I don't know that. I think he can because he's quick enough with his releases to avoid it, but we won't know that answer till we see it. Number 3 is Josh Downs. I think he kind of plays like Stephon Diggs. And what I mean by that is, like, he's not quite as thick. He's only 171 pounds, and he's not powerful, but he's so explosive and smooth in and out of routes. Everybody remembers the first game of Stephon Diggs. We go to Denver, and he runs that blaze out where it's like he's running straight for about 10 yards, fakes a post for like 3 steps, and cuts out, where he got about 10 yards of separation on all-pro Aqib Talib. That's the kind of stuff that Josh Downs can do consistently. And he can win short. He can win long. He's arguably the best contested catch receiver in this class at 5'9" and 171 pounds. That speaks volumes about what he can do. He is my favorite player in this class. Last year, I was in love with Chris Olave. I was not afraid to say it, and I was proven right, as I thought he was the rookie of the year last year, and I still think he got snubbed. But that's a conversation for another day. My 4 is Zay Flowers, Boston College. I've seen some comparisons to guys like Steve Smith, Antonio Brown, and I think like his high-end potential, I think he is those guys. But I use comps as play style. How do they play? Not how good they are. How do they play? And it's kind of like a baseball hitter, right? Some guys hit with power. Some guys hit with finesse. Some guys hit line drives and grounders. Some guys are slap hitters. Everybody hits differently. And that's how I like to use my comps. And I think my comp for Zay Flowers is Antonio Brown because of how they win. They win with speed. They win with quickness. They're not afraid to deal with physicality, and they're good at it. Those little things make such a difference. And tracking the ball. There wasn't many better than Antonio Brown at tracking the ball. As a football player only, because we all know the off the field, there was not a better receiver for like a 6-year stretch than Antonio Brown. You can talk to me about Julio Jones. I will disagree with you vehemently. Antonio Brown was phenomenal, and he proved it year in and year out, no matter the situation, no matter the double or triple coverage. And he set records consistently. The man was possessed while on a football field, and he was just incredible. And if Zay Flowers plays like that, that's a guy I'd like to bring into my room. Number 5 is a guy that a lot of people haven't won, and that's Jackson Smith-Njigba. I'm not sold that he can win in press coverage. That we kind of talked about it earlier. I want to see if I can project them to do it. I haven't seen enough where I can confidently project him to win against press. That doesn't mean he can't. That just means I have questions. And as long as I have those questions, he's going to be at 5. And it's not that he's not great. Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson called him the best wide receiver in that room. That included both of those guys. And Marvin Harrison Jr., who's likely a top 5 pick next year. Like, that wide receiver room is disgusting. It's so talented. Multiple 5 stars. Brian Hartline is arguably the best position coach in college football. That dude could be a head coach tomorrow, and I wouldn't be shocked because of how well he can recruit, how well he can develop, and he's been in a phenomenal infrastructure, so he could build one up at another program. I like those guys a lot. I also think that day 2 is going to be where the position really thrives. A lot of dudes that I think could be really good pros, but unless you hit big with Johnston or Jackson Smith-Njigba, there's really not a number 1 wide receiver in this class. Maybe Cedric Tillman, if you get lucky on day 2, but it's a bunch of great complementary pieces. And that's what the Vikings need, and that's okay.
What do you think about Jalen Hyatt? I've been watching a little bit of stuff on him. I think I kind of like him, I guess. I'm kind of curious as to what your thoughts were on him.
I'll be honest, compared to the consensus, I hate him. I don't think he's that good. I think he's a one-trick pony. I don't like to make this comparison, but just for Vikings fans' perspective, I kind of will. Troy Williamson vibes. Well, hold on. Troy Williamson had the vision issues. That was why he failed. My worthless opinion. That was well done. Now you can go away, and thank you for tuning in. So Hyatt, he goes zoom. That's it. He doesn't catch the ball very well. He's okay yards after catch. He's okay tracking. He doesn't have any semblance of a route tree. He doesn't what does he do that's a good receiver other than I run fast and the ball can just drop into my arms because I have 5 yards of separation? That's what he does. And you know what? That's a trump card. But the game is so different in the NFL. college football, the hash marks are 9 yards wider. So if you're on the far left hash, there's a shit ton of space on the right side, and then you can create spacing issues with the defense. Those kind of things are why Hyatt was able to get so open so often. You're not going to be able to do that in the pros because the spacing is. Odie, you're okay, bud. It just thundered, and Odie is a little weary of thunder, but at least he's not biting my feet. You have to look at those things. In the NFL, everything's much more condensed. You're not going to have open throwing windows. You're not going to have this incredible amount of spacing to work with. Hyatt's going to struggle. And I don't think he's a receiver. I think he's a runner that catches the football. And I think that's the difference. You talk about speed guys. Jalen Waddle was a receiver that was really, really fast, just like Tyreek Hill. Henry Ruggs, if he didn't make that stupid decision while he was driving his Corvette, I think that he would have been one of those guys too. But then you have speed guys, the guys that Al Davis would take in the top 10, Darius Hayward-Bay, and the Troy Williamsons. They're track guys that play wide receiver. They're not wide receivers.
Hands, man. They need hands.
Yeah. Yep. You need more than that too. Like the ability to be nuanced at the position is so important.
So you're kind of putting him as like a Mike Wallace type vibe.
I think Mike Wallace is more of a receiver than Jalen Hyatt. I don't like Hyatt. I would not want him on my football team.
Okay. Drew's asking about Tank Dell. What do you think about him?
I really like Tank Dell, but you also have to understand what you're getting. The man weighs 163 pounds, but he dealt with press constantly at Houston, and he beat press constantly at Houston. He was excellent against press with consistency, and I think that's the key. He was able to beat it with quickness, and he's able to gain separation. When I saw him at the Senior Bowl, I came away very, very impressed. This is a player that once I watched the film, I also was really impressed by. He's probably going to be limited to the slot and maybe a returner, but man, you can get that guy the football and he does things with it. And at a certain point, you can deal with the size concerns. After about pick 75, I'd start to consider him, but it also have to be who is up on the board as well. I really like Tank Dell. Plus, for a small guy, Tank's a phenomenal nickname.
Oh, of course. Okay. Our buddy Reggie's got a question here. He said, is there a wide receiver you would trade up for? And if so, how high would you go?
Only a couple spots, and it'd be Quentin Johnston. I'd maybe go up to 20, and based on the Rich Hill trade chart, you're giving up your 4th round pick, 119. I don't think there's anybody quite that good, but I do really, really believe in Johnston, and me putting him as my number 2 overall player at this point. I haven't watched the offensive lineman or Jalen Carter yet, but I love what he can bring, and because of that, I'd go up a couple spots, but I'd probably rather trade down and take a receiver. Odie, you're okay.
Okay. Well, since you brought up Jalen Carter, why don't we switch on over to the defensive side of things and talk a little bit of defensive line.
Okay.
With, of course, now the big stuff with Carter, him showing up, of course, the off the field stuff, and then showing up at his pro day, not looking like he was in shape and kind of blowing the whole process. He was at one point in time considered top 3, top 4 pick. Where do you think he falls due to some of the stuff, or does he?
I'm not convinced he's going to fall past 5. I'm really not, especially because Seattle has such a massive need on the interior. Here's my thing with Carter. I can only go based off what I know. And I don't have the inside information that, hey, his teammate said this. He's really like this behind the scenes. I don't know those things. I can't judge a guy based off what I don't know. Let me tell you what I do know. Carter's a top 3 player in this class, bar none, based on the film, based on what I know. And I almost guarantee you when an in-depth study comes back, he will be my number 1 player. And look, he got charged with reckless driving, being an idiot. And I said this on Purple Access that I recorded on Purple Daily with Judd Zolgad yesterday. I used to go 90 down my dirt road when I was 17. Now, I knew the terrain, So it wasn't like going 90 down a random dirt road. But yeah, I used to go 90 down the dirt road. Why? Because I was 17 and a kid. He made a mistake. He didn't like pull a gun on somebody and pull the trigger. Like he made a mistake as a kid. And that came out conveniently, literally minutes before he was supposed to speak at the combine. And then he has to go deal with it during the most important, 3 months of this kid's life. And then you can imagine how he wasn't the most focused player in the world going into into his pro day. So I'm not worrying too much about it. I don't think he's necessarily, based on what I can see, I don't think he's lazy. I think he's just dealing with shit. And I'm still taking him top 5. That dude is you could talk about him on a tier as far as a disruptor with Aaron Donald. Dude just gets penetration, gets into the backfield, changes plays. He's incredible. Drew mentioned in the comments, Travon Walker went number 1 last year. Jalen Carter was the best player on the defensive line last year, bar none. Travon Walker, 1st overall pick. Jordan Davis, 15th overall pick. Nolan Smith, probably going top 15. And Jalen Carter. That was your starting unit. Carter was the best guy. It's going to be hard for me to see him falling past 5.
Now, then, how about guys that may be potential targets should the Vikings go place? We talked to Lance and I've talked about this quite a bit in the show about, if we're running a 3-4, the need for having one of those big space-eating nose tackles. Is that a possibility? Maybe not 1st round, but 3rd, 4th round,
mid-round.
Guys like Kalijah Cansey, Brian Breesy, guys like that. I guess your thoughts on them.
Cansey is an outlier, and I haven't done a full watch on him, but he is explosive and gets to the quarterback. But he's also 280 pounds, and he stinks in run defense. So I don't know what he's going to be at the next level, if he's going to be a player, if he's just going to be average. I really don't know. There is he's going to be a fascinating one, but his one trick is rushing the passer, and that's incredibly valuable. Brisset is all projection because he's all traits. He's a top 20 prospect of all time, according to 24/7 Sports. He's got rare ability paired with that size, but he doesn't have the production to back it up. And it's not all his fault. Torn ACL in 2021, lost his stud defensive coordinator in 2022. Brent Venables went to be the head coach of Oklahoma. And I can understand it. And I think that's a guy that Brian Flores might want to bet on because you can utilize him in a lot of different ways. Versatility is going to be a key of this defense as long as Flores is here. And it's something we have to really consider when we're talking about some of these prospects. Space Eater, there's really not a good one in this class. Siaki Ika from Baylor, big dude, looked good on tape, tested athletically abysmal. We're talking some stuff in the 13th, 14th percentile as far as explosiveness. I'm not touching him unless he falls around 5. Mozzie Smith is an athletic freakazoid from Michigan. He was on Bruce Feldman's freak lists. I highly recommend you read it every year because it's the 100 freakiest college football athletes. You can get a sense of, hey, who are we going to be seeing in the draft this next year? It's a really good baseline because some of these guys don't necessarily get a lot of opportunity to play because of people ahead of them. So it's really good to watch, read in real time. Mozzie Smith was number 1. Dude's 330 pounds and is just an athletic freak. We're 3-cone faster than Aiden Hutchinson. And Aiden Hutchinson was 6.7 or something. He's incredible, but he's raw. You're gonna have to work with him a lot on technique. You're gonna have to work with him a little bit in 2-gapping, but he's a good football player that you can build upon and work with. And I think he can be a good pass rusher too. This isn't a great D-line class. It's a good edge class at the top, and then it kind of craters after about round 4. But I don't think they're going to target defensive line. I think that's why they made the signing they did by bringing back Bullard, by bringing in Dean Lowry. I don't think that they're going to be focusing on that in draft. Odie.
It's okay, Odie.
He's all right. He's just worried about the Thunder, and then we're cooped up in my office, and we don't spend a lot of time up here. Odie,
Nah.
you okay, bud?
Well, since we mentioned edge prospects here a second ago, edge is, especially with the questions with Hunter and Za'Darius and everything else rolling around here. What do you think about that edge position? It's, I guess, my opinion, probably one of the bigger question marks that we might have to be addressing. Who do you think would be around, I guess, where we could hit on and good fits for the Vikes?
I'd want to hit on edge in round one. We haven't done a round one edge since Erasmus James in 2005. Here's the weird thing with the Vikings. Their history with edge rushers, it's either they draft them and they're very good, or they draft them and they bust. There's almost never an in-between. You've got Hall of Famers on the defensive line. You've got a lot of really talented players that have played the edge position for the Vikings. You also have a lot of busts. Think of all the guys that they've tried to draft in the Danielle Hunter, Everson Griffin, Brian Robinson role. Okay, bud, come here. There we go, bud. He wanted to come up. Say hi, Odie.
There's Odie.
Yeah. But even before you had Danielle Hunter, Everson Griffin was a 4th-round pick. Ray Edwards was a 4th-round pick. Brian Robinson was a 4th-round pick. They threw a lot of resources in those middle rounds. So it wasn't just a Danielle Hunter thing, but the Danielle Hunter win and how he became like a top edge in the league. That is why they kept going back to that well. And
makes sense.
I want to take a guy early because I think you can make a huge difference. And edge rushers, the earlier you draft them, the better off you are. It's got one of the highest discrepancy rates in being successful, first round or not, across all the positions in the NFL. So I think Nolan Smith could be good, but he needs some work. BJ Ojolari, I really like as well. Miles Murphy, I don't know if he's a guy you want for this scheme. He's 6'5.5", 272, athletic beat as hell, powerful, but he's raw. If you draft him, you're going to be thinking about him like you did Rashawn Gary a few years ago. All traits, needs work, but if you get him to a point where he's good, look out. A guy I like in the mid-rounds, Yaya Diaby from Louisville. Ran like a 4.5 40 at 270 pounds. He's big. He can bend a little bit off the edge. He's going to play similar to Everson Griffin. He's a power edge, but he's got some juice. And I think that's somebody that I would want to bring into my room. And I think you could stand him up too, which makes him even more versatile. But edge, I'll say this. I actually wrote a piece for Vikings Wire about 40 minutes before we came on the air. I think that they're trying to still trade Za'Darius Smith and Dalvin Cook. And I'll be honest, I think when you talk about those two guys, I wonder if they already have something worked out for our draft day. And here's why I think that. It came out that the Lions and Vikings already had a predetermined trade worked out where if the guy wasn't there for the Vikings that they wanted at 12, they were going to trade with the Lions. That's why the trade happened so quick. Those conversations have already been had and they're already happening. If X player doesn't get to Y team and they're like, okay, we're going to give you this compensation for Za'Darius Smith or this compensation for Dalvin Cook. I can see that happening. I think that's the only reason why they're still on the roster.
That makes complete sense as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's obviously a plan in place on a lot of the stuff that we don't know about because it seems like they've almost, signed replacements for guys who are still here in a few of these positions.
Kevin Seifert wrote about that today, and it kind of got my wheels churning. Like, hey, why are they really holding on to these guys? Because he kind of opined about it, and my thinking is that they're trying to still work on trades, and even if they eat a little bit of salary back, but they get an asset, they can live with that.
Mm-hmm. Now, next spot, I guess would be our inside linebacker group. Of course, we know Kendricks is gone. Samoa likely taking that spot, but Jordan Hicks probably on a one and done going forward here. Who do you like in that off-ball middle linebacker type area?
This is a weak draft for linebacker. It's a draft where you're not going to really get anybody like of value until like the 40s. I like DeMarvion Overshown from Texas. I think he's a longer version of Asamoah. He's a former safety. He's fast. He's physical. He crashes downhill well. He's a good tackler. Still struggles to shed blocks, but he's not Chaz Surratt bad. And I think that's really important. Trenton Simpson from Clemson has all the ability in the world. He can't see worth a shit. He doesn't know where he's going. But if he goes the right direction, he blows up a play. Drew Sanders is very similar to Anthony Barr in play style. So that's kind of the guy you're getting there. Jack Campbell, as Nick mentions there, is an interesting one. I didn't think he was that athletic on tape. I thought he was a fine athlete. I didn't think he was that good of an athlete. And I think that makes a difference as far as when you're evaluating. Okay, this guy was a super athlete. Why didn't he look like that on tape? And you have to be able to figure that out on your own as to why. Yeah, and there's a lot of interesting players. And the Vikings are probably going to have to do something. The only linebacker on the roster after this year is Brian Asamoah. Like, that's a position where they're going to have to figure something out. I don't know what they're going to do, but a guy I'd like Overshown. I'd like Diane Henley, the former receiver turned linebacker for Washington State. I think he's a modern day style linebacker, can cover, can run, can crash downhill, and get those guys to shoot gaps. And I think you're going to be your most successful.
In my opinion, in our style of defense, we need an interior linebacker that can cover, tight ends. Otherwise, that middle of the field is wide open. It seems like all the time.
That was painfully obvious last year with of course, that was Donatel's defense. But
right.
What do you think, Tyler, about Noah Sewell out of Oregon? I've been hearing a little buzz on him. Are you?
He tested like garbage, just garbage. I thought he was bad. Like I want nothing to do with him.
What about the dude out of Alabama, Henry Tutua?
I don't think he's very fast. I don't think he's really fluid in an open space, and I think those things are really concerning for me. I would honestly hold off on that. I mean, if he's available in round 4 or 5, then yeah, but I'm not going to prioritize him.
Okay.
Give a few more quick shout outs here. I know there's been a lot of people scrolling through. Nick, Thadir, GMAC, AJ. Thank you guys, everybody, for joining in the chat and keeping this going here. We're glad to have you guys here. We're trying to get to as much of the stuff as we can.
How about some defensive backs?
Sounds like a good place to go next.
Yeah, fire away. What do you guys want to know about?
You think now after bringing in Murphy, is cornerback a spot that we're likely to target in the first round, or is it something you think we can hold off until midday 2 or something like that?
Corner was on everybody's radar.
So here's the thing with cornerback. It's a flush cornerback market. You don't have to get a guy early because you can get a really quality guy later.
Fantastic.
And I think it's one of those things where at the cornerback position, all you need is guys who can play. You don't need anyone elite. You just need a good group. It's a weakling system. If you think the value of corner is going to be between like 40 and 70, don't take one in round 1. Trade back. Take one 40 to 70. You have to exploit the market and get guys where the value's the best. And that's what Kwesi is going to try to do. That's why he got Andrew Booth Jr. at 42 last year. That's why he targeted, I still think the value is wrong with Ed Ingram and Brian Asamoah, but that's where he felt the value was. So he took him. And that's what I think he's going to do with this quarterback position. The first pick, if there's a first round pick, I don't think it'll be corner. I really don't. I think the first pick's going to end up wide receiver or quarterback, but they will take a corner at some point. I also think that they're going to sign 2 more corners. They're not going to just have these 3 guys on the roster plus Tay Gowan and Kalen Barnes.
So somebody in that day 2 range, who do you think would be a good fit for what Flores is going to want to do?
My favorite corner in this class is a guy named Darius Rush from South Carolina. Cam Smith gets all the hype. Darius Rush is a better athlete, and in press coverage, he's very interesting. He loses early a lot, but he has the athleticism and intelligence. I like Kai Blue Kelly too, but not quite as much as I like Darius Rush. And what Rush is able to do is he can come back and take care of business. So he can all of a sudden, I lose the rep. Well, I know he's going to run a dig route, so I'll just beat him to the spot and get the pick anyways. That's the kind of stuff he does. And if you can teach him not to lose as much early, he already has the ability to win after he loses, so you're going to be in a good spot. And I think you can get him round 3, round 4, and he's a guy that I would want to bring into my room and develop. I love Darius Rush.
Okay. We'd be remiss if, since we're talking secondary, we didn't talk about Lance's draft crush here, so I'll let him ask that question.
Yeah, what's your take on Brian Branch from Alabama?
I really like Brian Branch. I wrote a long piece about why I think Brian Flores would be infatuated with him.
I love him. You can move him anywhere.
Yeah, he's incredibly versatile. He can not only be versatile, but he's really good at multiple positions. And that's not something that you are able to see often. I really like what he brings to your team. And Branch was trusted by Nick Saban to do literally everything. And if you have Nick Saban's trust, you don't think everybody else is going to trust you too? It's right. Nick Saban. You're in a damn good spot.
Yeah, if I was given anybody on defense in this draft, he would be my guy I would go after.
Yeah. If you took him in round 1, I'm not going to complain. I love Brian Branch. And you know what? Be like, we already have safeties that took scene last year. Well, Branch can play in the slot, and 3 safety looks are becoming the norm.
Yes.
Because multiple tight end sets, safeties are better at covering. And quite frankly, bigger safeties are better versatile players than you would have with your standard will linebacker.
Agreed. And we really don't have a nickel / slot cornerback on the roster right now either. So
here back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now the big question. You're the general manager, Kwesi Adolfo-Forno. If you were running the draft, what are you doing with the Vikings' first pick? Trade up, trade back? If you're sticking put, who are you picking? What do you think?
If one of Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, or CJ Stroud falls to 10, I'm trading up. And I'm paying the price. I don't care.
Yes.
If those guys are gone, I would trade up to about 16 or 17 for Will Levis. If not, if all the quarterbacks are gone, I'm trading down, trying to get 2 picks in the second round, because that's where the most value is in this draft.
Smart.
In the second round. Get multiple quality players. And my ideal scenario, if it's not a top quarterback, it's Josh Downs from North Carolina. I'm just obsessed with what he brings to the team, what he's able to do, and that's the kind of guy I want to bet on.
You think Downs is going to be there in the second round, or is he going to sneak into the end of the first?
Downs' range is like 20 to 50. There are a lot of receivers kind of in that glut. Downs is one of them. I don't know where he goes. I thought he was going to go past 42 to the Browns, but then the Browns traded for Elijah Moore. I think he's going to go in that range.
Quick take on Stetson Bennett.
Man, I don't know. It's
been quiet on that front. I mean, it seems to be quiet.
Stetson Bennett to me is the guy that you drive through Georgia, you see on a billboard 2 national championship rings, and he's advertising his car dealership. I don't think he's I think he's fine. He's a long-term backup at best. I don't think he's a starter. he is small. He's like 5'10 and a half, 5'11, and he's like 190 pounds. Like, that's not success at the quarterback position. He's got an okay arm. He's a better athlete than anyone will give him credit for because, well, it's Stetson Bennett. But I wouldn't draft him. I just wouldn't.
Okay. I respect that take.
Yeah, it seems like it's all over the board with him. I know I've heard, and granted, there's bias there, but I know Fran Tarkenton was on with Paul Allen a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking up Stetson Bennett real heavy. But of course, Tark is Georgia alum and true blue through and through, is going to talk up all those guys. But then I've heard, stuff like on your end too, where he's an undrafted free agent. So it's.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to people like on sports radio, like I have a lot of respect for the job that they do and they have to do. But I'll say this, if I know you haven't watched the film and tried to really break these guys down, like I'm not taking what you say very serious as far as like those bigwig kind of guys, just because, look, like your job is to create content and create buzz and create controversy, because look, controversy creates cash, and the more people that listen to your show, the better. You have it's Colin Cowherd. You have a different objective than what my objective is as far as how you make money in this business. I'm trying to give as much honest analysis as I can. Cowherd is brilliant because he makes a crap ton of money and he just pushes whatever narrative he wants. And that brings in a lot of money for Fox Sports and himself. So you just have to be careful who you're listening to in that sense. And like you said, Tarkenton's a Georgia guy. Like I'm willing to bet that he hasn't broken down the all-22 film of Bennett and all these other guys. And that's fine. I don't blame him if he hasn't, but I'm also not going to really take a lot of stock into what he says because of those elements.
Fair enough.
Drew, Colin Cowherd might be a nose picker, but he's a nose picker that knows how to make money. So he actually picked gold. Good on him.
That was actually Toonces, but yeah.
Oh, sorry, Toonces.
Drew with a.
I think it's an ideal situation for any quarterback that would come here and sit a year behind Cousins and bid farewell Cousins on his farewell tour in Minnesota and be there for next year, so we're not scrambling to get somebody to take over when Cousins is gone.
Yeah.
I mean, I tend to agree on that too, but Drew says if you can't get the guy you want, don't just take a guy because he's there.
I agree with him, but I would still take a guy I believe could be something later on. So in round one, if your guy's not there, bail. No, I'm out. But if you I kind of like Clayton Tune. Let's take a chance on him at pick 119. That's when you can make that choice. Be like, what the hell? Let's throw a dart. Vikings haven't thrown enough darts in their history.
Right.
I'll have to pull it up. I actually will pull it up. I actually did a study on the Vikings quarterback position, how they've drafted quarterbacks throughout their history. I'll need to find it.
Yeah,
I don't know how
we did one on that here a while back too. We've only taken 4 quarterbacks in the first round total.
Yeah.
Like 2 in the second and maybe 3 in the third, something like that. Just about all the quarterbacks this team has drafted, I think there was 26 total.
Mm-hmm.
We're 4th round or later.
Yeah. All right. So here's what I had. The Vikings have made 286 picks from 1980 to 1999. And of those, 7 were quarterbacks. 281 from 2020 through present day. 6 of them were drafted as quarterbacks. I don't count Joe Webb. He was drafted and announced as a wide receiver.
Right.
And yes, did he play quarterback? Yes, he did. And you can, but because he wasn't drafted as one and they didn't announce him as one, I don't count it because the intention was not for him to play quarterback. Therefore, even though he played it, they weren't drafting him to do it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we've been going about an hour here, so we'll wrap it up so we can let Tyler get on with his evening and everything else. Any last words you want to give to everybody, Tyler, and tell everybody where they can find you with your content and things like that?
Absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at @TheRealForno. You can find all my written work at vikingswire.usatoday.com. And myself and Luff Krieger, David Stefano, most of you probably know who he is, along with Darren Campbell, started Vikings First and Goal. We split off from Climbing the Pocket a few weeks ago, and we're already at almost 400 subscribers. It's been going really well. Anytime news breaks, we're on there talking about it, except the week I was in Arizona for my sister-in-law's wedding. And we're also having multiple shows, a lot of interviews. We've already interviewed Eric Edholm of NFL.com, Cole Thompson of Sports Illustrated. Like we're on it. We're trying to make this thing just huge and fun. And I think we're off to a great start so far. But the nice part is the journey's not over. A lot of really cool stuff coming for draft season. I'm also writing for zonecoverage.com, more feature style, paired with everything that I do with Vikings Wire. So look, it's a good time. April is tomorrow and we're having fun.
All right. Again, want to thank everybody who joined us in the chat, all the questions, comments, everything like that. If you have not done so yet, please hit that subscribe button on the YouTube page. It helps us out a ton. Go over to Vikings First and Goal. Give those guys a subscribe and a like over there as well. Help them build their brand new page, make things better. Draft is a month away. Look, we're looking back here. Kind of didn't realize it until yesterday when we were looking at it. We had you on exactly 1 year ago on our pre-draft show last year. So
see you next year again.
Yeah.
Same time, same place.
All right.
But again, thanks everybody. If you like what we're doing, you have any ideas or comments on things that you want us to take a look at, especially this summer in the off season when there's a little bit of slow time, leave a comment. Hit us up on our social channels, things like that. Let us know what you want to see because we're here for you guys. We want to make our shows bigger, better, working in conjunction with guys like Tyler, with guys like Justin and Dave and Drew and Ted and everybody, because this content creation group, it's a family more, kind of a thing. And when one succeeds, we all succeed. And, love to see people, especially the ones that are starting things from scratch and working their way up. Love to see everybody make something out because, in the end, we all love the Vikings, and that's why we do this kind of stuff. So, but with that, Lance, why don't you take us home?
Thanks again, Tyler, for being on the show this week. We appreciate having you here. And we will see you guys next week, Friday, same time, same place for episode 105. Take care, everybody. Skol.
All right. Have a good weekend, everybody.